Hey guys, my name is Jade Gaines, and today I'm going to be explaining to you my findings and what the difference between performance art and dance is. Hey guys, it's me again, and now I'm going to dive into the history of performance art and all that defines it and all that defines the other dance forms for performance art. So the history of performance art and what defines it from dancing or movement started out with a blurry line. The art revolutionaries and dance innovators crossed paths very early on. The performance art started making its way during the Surrealist, the Dada, the Fluxus movements, and each of those movements took movement and performance aspects into their art to create it. Many people weren't catching on within these art movements and not understanding that art doesn't have to be still, that art can move and it can allow and involve audience participation. Around the 1930s in North Carolina, Black Mountain College students John Cage and Merce Cunningham, a dancer and a composer, a composer and a dancer, attended. Amongst them were many other experimental artists like William and Elaine de Kooning, Robert Rochberg, and David Tudor. These artists came together as a collective to create untitled pieces that were choreographed and to be performed throughout school. These performances lacked a narrative and relevance, but it was a spark of something new, and with the guidance of John Cage, the collaboration of these artists created the first happening. Years later, when Alan Capro, an abstract expressionist, decided to follow the legacy of Jackson Pollock, which is who is the artist when they create art and what are the performative possibilities that I can involve as I create art, he started to follow this path very steadily. Trying to ease his artist block one day, he went on a mushroom hunt with John Cage and others. And within this trip, John Cage and Alan Capro got really close. They shared their inner struggles and their inner ideas of music. And when they got back to school, they were inspired, and he managed to create full-length performances, which Alan Capro coined the term for happenings. The world of music, visual, and performing arts were all meshing together back then to create this avant-garde branch of art. Dance and performance art have a similar foundation for artistic exploration. They both want the audience to think and to bring about change in the world. Dance can be made based off of social commentary, just as paintings, sculptures, and installations can be. However, when does one know when one is performing art and art is being performed? Performance art has been known to be just as interactive as dance, a performing art, can be when you look closer to the modern, postmodern spectrum of dance. A perfect example of a performing art is the Japanese dance form called Buto. When one watches Buto, it begs the question, is this dance? Is this art? Am I watching performance art? A dancer allows their soul to be bared, blank and rejected, and approved of to convey their important meaning. Performing art would be a medium of dance that allows a dancer to use their body to speak for them. Buto speaks on taboo experiences. It reveals the deep-rooted unconscious and confronts the unspoken. However, when one sees a performance of Buto, the technique of it is theatrical and done in a still motion fashion. When the art is being performed in the landscape, the motion, and the specifically placed interactions that assume appropriate reactions, they create the piece. A specific style in performance art would be the happenings, which was created by Alan Capro, and that was the first splash of performance art. It was meant to incorporate aspects of everyday life, the surroundings, the sounds, and the reactions planned or unplanned. Merce Cunningham, the dancer, was also intrigued by a similar theory. Both artists were drawn to the idea of chance work. Cunningham thought that if everyday gestures were okay for daily life, then what makes them unacceptable for the stage? Coming from his background where he trained with Martha Graham, she created constant psychodramas. One would say there isn't enough vulnerability in a normal pace and step of life. There is not enough drama within that. He ran away from that norm and worked with Cage and involved chance art within a lot of his pieces with music, lighting, props. Most times his dancers would get on stage and not even know what song they're dancing to. As stated earlier, Cunningham and Cage worked together in school to create the earlier template of what a happening is. Although the first true version and vision of what performance art was later developed by Alan Capro. And this could only be birthed out of the untitled happening theatrical piece number 1. The next style of performance art that we have is called action painting. It was started by Jackson Pollock, where he'd have his canvases of his work moving, acting as his own movements and gestures. The term action painting was coined by the art critic Harold Rosenberg. A young artist group in Japan got wind of this movement, and their name was called the Gutai Movement of Concrete Art. They admired Pollock's process. They did add a more relevant kick, which was to bring action into the painting. Instead of having the art be turned into motion, let the motion create the art. Ritual and endurance performance art are other styles that were later in the game. Artists like Marina Abramovich used these styles. Ritual and endurance art have a similar foundation, and ritual art was used to deconstruct what we know as art as much as it was to reconstruct art back to the sacred origins. Endurance art involves the ritual art due to the process and general idea the artist has. However, endurance art is not testing the artist's strength and stamina and ability. It is testing the spectators. It's pushing their patience, their intrigue, and determination past limits that they haven't been before. Lastly, we have body art, which came out of the performance art movement a little earlier than the previous two styles that I mentioned, but it made way for them to become new concepts. Body art was the first style of performance art that dropped the veil between the two artistic mediums. Body art allowed the artists to use their canvases, and the human body became a great tool to make historical and political statements about the female body, i.e. Hannah Wilke. Later on, body art became a manufacturer for critical thoughts about the human's body's limitations, like Anna Mendanita chose to do with her body art process. It also led to provoking a question within the audience about their willingness to have violence towards one another, i.e. Marina Abramovich. Art in general is made to push the boundaries of people. To what extent will they understand the meaning and the commentary? Performance art is a collection of images and actions that contest the social regimes, as well as having a foundation for a strong social critique. It asks the questions that a society is afraid to. A main point of performance art is to break out of the conventional mediums of art, as well as process art. Process art adopts Jason Pollock's theory of how am I getting there? How is the art getting there? What are my actions leading to it? When you go see dance, you'll find some pieces are process driven, but most times when they're professionally done, they're going to be product driven. Are the lines clean? Was there enough rehearsal? Is the meaning out there? Sometimes in some of the performances in the 60s, most performances used dance and movement, but artists like Joseph Byers wanted to create a defining line. He preferred performance art as actions instead of movements. Marina Abramovich, one of the few female performance artists of her time, had a piece called Rhythm Zero. In this piece, it allowed her to lay out weapons on the table that inflicted pain or pleasure on her, and her spectators had the option to choose whichever they wanted to use on her. She specifically quoted, "I made this piece to see how far the public will go." The piece only ended once a gun was pulled on her head. I felt that within this piece, she was trying to make a statement based on common sense, courtesy, decency, and what an individual feels once they have the ability to break out of societal norms and to not be confined to the same structure of all of us sheep. The unspoken set of rules to not hurt or pleasure someone in public has created this sheltered world, and it makes a cringe factor if you ever see it publicly displayed. Rhythm Zero clearly displays all the cringe reactions that one could see. It allows people to see real human reaction and nonverbal answers to the questions that are posed, like when there's a question in isolation, sexuality, race, gender, whatever you name it. Performance art can answer that question. To dance means you're allowing your soul to be enveloped into the cosmos while containing them within yourself. For Buto, there is not a school or official training for the technique, and even most of the Buto dancers pick it up by themselves. To be a Buto dancer, you have to have the desire to transform the body and rebel against society. A technique like Buto requires the dancer to want to shy the traditional framework, much like Capro, Cunningham, and Cage, who experimented with the mediums of art on the western side. We had experimental dancers in Japan. Kozuno Uno and Tatsumi Nijigata were the first to dive into this era of shying the aesthetic norm of dance. They took after Baku Ishii, the first modern dancer in Japan. He broke away from that mold and came up with creation dance, where he wanted to implement new dance concepts to allow freer expression from the dancer. Buto involves the use of white, face, and body makeup. It creates grotesque and androgynous images that are carried to theatrical levels. It automatically confronts the audience with awkwardness and remains unashamed. An expressionist dance form that was born out of post-war Japan that wanted to destruct what was previously known of art into a primal, concrete simplicity, which would be the human body in everyday life. Much like avant-garde performance artists strive for, they want to reconstruct a new way to state your message, to confront them, and to get your audience involved. A similar theory falls along with how American postmodern dancers thought about their previous gratified dance techniques. Budo performances are often done without music, are hyper-controlled in their slow speed, leading to a singular end image, and can be done on stage with added props. These performances are meant to cater to the reflection of the depths of the soul, revealing an aesthetic dimension of the body. It only highlights the perverse elements within each individual, allowing reflection upon their deep-rooted places and creates a spark of interest and critical thinking when the audience tries to digest what they just saw. We had two major pioneers after Ishii, which was Ono and Hijata. Both were interested by what Baku Ishii was striving for in dance, and yet they took two different ways of viewing this philosophy. Through the eyes of Kazuno Ono, Buto revolved around a dead body. Ono wanted to use dance to expose the banality of human life, exhibiting everything we try to present publicly, the ugliness, the grotesque, the experience and exposure of suffering. By applying the idea of dancing in a dead body, it allows the dancer to freely put any emotion into their work. There isn't a set emotion or mood. The experience of the dance and starting with the blank canvas of emotion helps the message to be brought out clearer. In a way, this theory can be seen similar to Pollux, not so much as a matter of the product but more of process. Uno considered the soul of Buto, and Hijata was considered the architect of it. Yasumi Hijata had a similar foundation to Kazuno Uno for what he built his Buto on. Both men wanted to create this dance form to speak and challenge society and their norms. However, Hijata created Ankoko Buto, which is a dance of darkness. And it is a darker dance form. The basis of the majority of emotions come from a deeper, more vulnerable place. With these embodied revelations, it allowed Hijata to create Ankoko Buto. He used the body to ask questions, whereas Ono wanted to embody and answer them. Hijata used the body to break the norms and recreate society. Ono wanted to expose societal norms for what they are in our eyes and what they should be seen as in reality. Both artists wanted to break the mold for society, but both reached in different ways to make the same statement. The line between art and life should be kept as fluid and perhaps as indistinct as possible, stated by Alan Capro. I agree with Mr. Capro, and in the research that I've done, my previous statement of the lines have always been blurred is true. In my findings, there are different forms of art and movements that define each from the other. However, over time, they've both borrowed from each other. Buto is a theatric movement that leads to a singular action and can be seen as performance art, and body art and happenings have borrowed from dance to make the art move in a more orderly and appealing fashion. I personally think there is no true defining line between the two, but performance art and dance aim to challenge what society thinks as a whole. The true difference is how they get there.